I'm Sam Carter, and it all started when I found out Pine Crest HOA was building 96 luxury homes on the farmland. I inherited from my grandpa, Henry Carter. He passed away in March 2024, leaving me 200 acres in Willow Bend, Georgia, a place my family had been tied to for generations. I live in Atlanta, busy with my environmental lawyer gig, rarely visiting Grandpa like I wished I had. But nobody could have seen this shock coming. Tuesday morning my phone rang at 6 a.m. Mrs. Martha Evans, Grandpa's neighbor for 40 years, screamed through the line, "Sam, they're building on your land. Big bulldozers started digging yesterday. You gotta come now." I thought she was mistaken, but Martha doesn't exaggerate. She added, "Pine Crest put up signs everywhere. They're planning nearly 100 houses on the east field." I threw clothes into a suitcase, jumped in my car, and sped 5 hours from Atlanta to Willow Bend, breaking every speed limit. Turning onto the dirt road to Grandpa's cabin, something felt off. The countryside peace was shattered by the roar of machinery. From the hilltop overlooking the east side, my heart sank. A fleet of bulldozers and excavators was tearing up the field where Grandpa grew corn and soybeans. Workers in hard hats moved like ants, spraying orange paint everywhere. A huge sign hit me like a punch. Pine Crest East 96 luxury homes, starting at $450,000. My land, they were stealing it right in front of me. I parked, stepped out, blood boiling. A woman stood nearby, beige slacks, crisp white shirt, holding a clipboard, talking on her phone. I walked over, telling myself, I need to figure this out. Henry would never sell the land, I was sure of it. And if they thought they could take it easily, they were about to learn I'm not someone to mess with. I stood there, dust swirling and excavators roaring, staring at the Pine Crest East sign like it was a declaration of war. This land was mine, Henry Carter's, and I couldn't let them tear it up without an explanation. I took a deep breath, marched past workers spraying orange paint on the grass, and headed straight for the neatly dressed woman on her phone. She hung up as I got close, sizing me up like I was some lost nuisance. "Excuse me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "what's going on here?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "We're prepping for a housing development," she replied, her tone slick like she'd rehearsed it 100 times. "Laura Bennett, Pine Crest HOA president." She extended a hand, but I didn't take it. "This is my land," I said flat out. "My grandpa Henry Carter owned this farm. He passed recently, and I inherited it." Laura tilted her head, her smile stiffening. "Must be a misunderstanding," she said, her tone mockingly sympathetic. "Pine Crest bought this plot last year. We have all the permits and approvals." "I don't buy it," I snapped. "Grandpa would never sell without telling me." Laura shrugged, like it wasn't worth her time. "Maybe he didn't tell you," she said, a slight sneer in her voice. "The contract was signed 9 months ago. We've been planning this expansion for years." My head spun. Henry was sick in his last months, but his mind was sharp. He loved this farm more than anything. No way he'd sell it, especially to people like Pine Crest. "I want to see the paperwork," I demanded, stepping closer. Laura didn't flinch, pulling a business card from her clipboard and handing it to me. "Contact our legal department," she said, her voice ice cold. "I assure you everything's in order. Now, if you'll excuse me, we have a schedule to keep." She turned away, dialing another number, leaving me standing there, powerless. The excavators kept roaring, ripping up the soil Grandpa once planted. I gripped the card tight, rage surging. Something wasn't right, I felt it in my bones. Driving back to Grandpa's cabin, I called Martha Evans. "Did Grandpa ever mention selling the land?" I asked, voice urgent. "Never," Martha shot back, firm as ever. "Henry swore he'd keep this farm for the family forever. 3 months ago, they showed up with surveying gear. He was livid, said they were trying to steal it." I hung up, mind racing. If Henry didn't sell, where'd Laura get her paperwork? I parked in front of the cabin, staring at the east field, now a chaotic construction site. Laura Bennett thought she could outsmart me, but she didn't know who I was, Henry Carter's grandson, someone who doesn't back down. I stepped inside, determined to find answers. If Pine Crest dared touch my land, they'd pay. And I had a gut feeling Grandpa left something, a clue, a trap to turn this around. The game had just begun. I walked into Grandpa Henry Carter's cabin, still fuming from my run-in with Laura Bennett. The house was quiet, just the wind slipping through old window cracks and the faint smell of damp wood in the air. I told myself, if Pine Crest is lying about buying the land, the answers have to be here. Henry wasn't the type to be fooled. He documented everything, from rainfall to planting days. If there's a clue, it's in his papers. I headed straight to the small office in the corner, where he'd spend hours with a pipe in his mouth. The room reeked of old tobacco and yellowed books. Shelves were crammed with farming almanacs, family photo albums, and meticulous handwritten notebooks. I pulled up a chair, opened the first desk drawer. Inside were stacks of letters, tractor repair bills, and crop notes, but nothing about Pine Crest or a land sale. I dug through 2 more drawers, finding only harmless stuff, receipts from 1985, a photo of me and Grandpa fishing by the swamp when I was 10. Nothing. Hours passed, it was getting dark. I flicked on the old desk lamp, its dim yellow light casting over the messy papers. "Grandpa, where'd you hide it?" I muttered, rubbing tired eyes. Martha said he'd been furious when Pine Crest showed up with survey gear 3 months ago. He must have done something to protect the land. I moved to the metal file cabinet by the desk, pulling the top drawer. Folders were organized by year, 1970 to 2023. I flipped through each one, hunting for any sign of a land deal. A 1997 letter from the county office popped up, but it was just about power lines, irrelevant. By nearly midnight, I was ready to give up. My eyes stung from reading faded handwriting under the lamp. But as I stood to turn it off, my foot pressed hard on the floor. A board creaked under my shoe, unusually loose. I knelt down, heart pounding, tapping around. I realized the board could lift. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a box cutter, and pried the edge. The board popped up, revealing a dark little hollow. Inside was an old metal box, rusted at the corners, latch shut. I looked around, no key, but then feeling under the desk, I found a small key taped down with duct tape. My hands shook as I opened the box. Inside were papers, the farm's deed, Henry's will naming me the heir, and some yellowed land surveys from the early 1900s. But what chilled me was a handwritten letter, addressed to Sam in Grandpa's firm script. I unfolded it, reading aloud. "If you're reading this, someone's trying to steal our land. Don't trust them, Sam. They've been trying to force me to sell for years, but I never agreed." I stopped, throat tight. He went on, "In my last 3 months, a guy from Pine Crest came here with papers, wanting me to sign road easements. I refused, but they wouldn't stop. The truth's in the survey, find it." I dug back into the box, pulling out the 1910 survey. Under the dim lamp, I saw hand-drawn boundaries, stretching farther than I thought, not just 200 acres, but nearly 280. If true, Pine Crest wasn't just building on my land. Part of their existing neighborhood was mine too. I sank into the chair, mind reeling. Henry knew, he'd left this trap for me. Laura Bennett thought she had it all figured out, but she didn't know I held something that could unravel her whole plan. I smirked. "Thanks, Grandpa," I whispered. The real fight was just starting. I sat in Grandpa Henry Carter's small office, clutching the letter he left, my head still spinning from finding the metal box under the floor. It was late, the desk lamp's faint yellow glow illuminating his firm words. "The truth's in the survey, find it." I set the letter down, digging through the box's papers again. The farm deed and will sat on top, but I needed something concrete, something to prove Laura Bennett and Pine Crest were lying. Then I touched a thick yellowed sheet, folded in half among the documents. I opened it, heart racing. It was a 1910 land survey, hand-drawn in faded black ink, signed by a surveyor from over a century ago. I spread the survey on the desk, comparing it to my memory of the farm, 200 acres Grandpa always mentioned. But this map told a different story. The eastern boundary stretched past the field where Pine Crest was building, far beyond what I'd imagined. I grabbed a pencil, tracing the lines. The eastern swamp, the old creek running through, even a strip of land now part of Pine Crest's current neighborhood, it was all within this boundary. I counted, doing rough math, not 200 acres, but closer to 280. If this was right, not only was Pine Crest east on my land, but part of their existing homes were too. My head buzzed, I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a glass of cold water to calm down, but my hands still shook as I carried the survey back to the office. I needed to double-check. From a drawer, I pulled out a modern Willow Bend map I'd brought from Atlanta. Environmental lawyers, like me, always have one handy. I laid the two side by side, comparing every boundary line. The modern map showed Henry's farm at just 200 acres, the eastern edge cut short, exactly where Pine Crest had taken over. Someone had altered it, but when and how? I returned to Grandpa's letter, reading the rest. "They've been trying to force me to sell for years," he wrote, "but I never signed. In my last 3 months, a guy from Pine Crest came demanding road easements, bringing different papers each time. I knew they wanted more, so I hid this survey. Compare it to the county records now, you'll see the truth." I nodded like he was right there. Henry didn't just refuse to sell, he'd anticipated this scheme, and set a trap. I needed confirmation from someone who'd know. I called Martha Evans, though it was nearly 1 a.m. She answered immediately, voice rough, but alert. "Martha, you remember anything about Pine Crest surveying the land?" I asked urgently. "Sure do," she replied, anger in her tone. "3 months ago, they came with equipment and wooden stakes." Henry was furious, yelling they had no right. "He told me, Martha, they want to steal the land, but I won't let it happen." The next day, he tore through his office, saying he needed something to protect the farm. I gripped the phone tighter. "He found it," I said, "and now I've got it." I hung up, returning to the survey. If the original boundary held, Pine Crest wasn't just building illegally on my land. Their current neighborhood, with houses, clubhouse, pool, might sit on Carter family property. But why were the county records different? I rummaged through the box again, finding another survey from 1978, updated from the 1910 one. It still showed 280 acres, matching the original. So the change came later, maybe in 1997, when Laura claimed the contract was signed, while Grandpa was hospitalized for heart surgery. I stood, pacing the room. Henry couldn't have signed anything then. I remembered Mom saying he nearly didn't make it. Someone had forged his signature, or worse, altered county records to carve off his land. I glanced out the window, seeing Pine Crest's construction lights, still glowing in the distance. Laura Bennett thought she had everything under control, but she didn't know I'd just found something that could destroy her empire. This survey wasn't just paper, it was the weapon Grandpa left me. I folded it up, tucked it into my jacket pocket. Tomorrow, I'd hit the county office, look for proof of the change. If Pine Crest dared play dirty, I'd make them pay double. Henry had laid the groundwork for this trap, now it was time for me to spring it. Dawn was breaking over the Willow Bend fields, as I stood before the mirror in Grandpa Henry Carter's house, gripping the 1910 land survey tight. I barely slept, my mind racing with last night's discovery. The farm wasn't just 200 acres, but nearly 280, covering Pine Crest East and part of their existing neighborhood. If Laura Bennett thought she could build on my land with a fake contract, she was about to learn she'd picked the wrong guy to mess with. I stuffed the survey into my jacket pocket, downed a quick sip of coffee, and drove straight to the construction site. When I arrived, the sun was up, lighting the dust clouds from excavators tearing into the earth. Workers buzzed around, the machine's roars drowning out the morning birds. I parked near the Pine Crest East 96 luxury homes sign and stepped out, determined not to leave without answers. Laura stood by a group of workers, still in her pristine beige outfit, pointing at something on her clipboard. When she saw me, she stopped talking, her cold eyes scanning me like before. "Morning, Miss Bennett," I said, stepping close, hands in pockets to hide my nerves. "We need to talk." Laura crossed her arms, a faint smirk on her lips. "Mr. Carter, I told you to contact our legal department, we're busy." I wasn't letting her dodge me. I've got something, I said, pulling out the 1910 survey and holding it up. This is the original boundary of my farm. 280 acres, including where you're building. Stop now, or I'll take this to court. Laura glanced at the paper, then scoffed. An old drawing doesn't prove anything. We have a legal purchase contract from your grandfather, signed 9 months ago. I stepped closer, voice hardening. Henry never sold the land. In 1997, when you say the contract was signed, he was in the hospital for heart surgery, couldn't sign a thing. Laura raised an eyebrow, but I caught a flicker of unease in her eyes. I want to see that contract, I demanded. Right now, she sighed, motioning a worker to grab a folder from a nearby car. Laura opened it, handed me a sheet with a shaky signature at the bottom. There, she said, voice confident. Contract for 80 acres on the east side, signed by Henry Carter. I took the paper, heart pounding. The signature looked like Grandpa's, but the strokes were wobbly, uneven, nothing like the firm handwriting in his letter to me. This is forged, I said, staring her down. Grandpa didn't sign this, and I'll prove it. Laura laughed, but it sounded dry, forced. Go ahead and try. Pine Crest has all the necessary permits, county approved. You don't stand a chance, Mr. Carter. I clenched the contract in my hand. If that's true, why don't you explain why the 1910 survey shows my land includes your current neighborhood? Not just this new project, your house might be on my property too. For the first time, she froze, just for a split second. But then she regained her composure, her voice dropping with a threat. You don't know who you're dealing with. We have connections at the county, in the courts. Stop now, before you lose everything. I smirked, not backing down. You're the one who should be worried. I'm heading to the county office today, and if I find proof the boundaries were changed, or this signature's fake, you won't just lose this project, but everything you've built. Laura tilted her head, her gaze sharp as a blade. Try it, she said, then turned away, signaling the workers to keep going. I stood there, watching the excavators tear up another piece of Grandpa's land, rage boiling inside me. On the drive back, I called Martha Evans. You remember anyone at the county office Grandpa trusted? I asked. George Grayson, she replied instantly. Worked there till 2000, close with Henry. Retired now, lives down Oak Road. I nodded, though she couldn't see. Laura might have connections, but I had Grandpa's legacy, and the trap he left. I'd find George, dig into the records, and make Pine Crest pay. The game had just shifted. I drove away from the Pine Crest East site, my hand still gripping the contract Laura Bennett had handed me. The scrawled signature of my grandpa, Henry Carter, looking like a bad joke. She thought I'd back off with a few threats, but she didn't know I'd found the 1910 survey, proving my land didn't just cover their new project, but part of their current neighborhood, too. I needed solid proof to expose this forgery, and I knew I couldn't do it alone. It was time to find someone who could help. Willow Bend's a small town, but I remembered Grandpa mentioning a trustworthy real estate lawyer, Daniel Hayes. A quick phone search showed his office right in the town center, in an old building with a faded wooden sign. I drove straight there, bringing the survey, Laura's contract, and Grandpa's letter. Stepping inside, a young receptionist looked surprised when I demanded to see Daniel immediately. It's urgent, I said, voice firm. She nodded, leading me to a small room packed with law books and the smell of old paper. Daniel Hayes looked older than I'd pictured, white hair, thick-rimmed glasses, wearing a button-up shirt with a red bow tie that felt out of place in the 21st century. He stood, shaking my hand with a firm grip. You're Sam Carter, right? I knew Henry. Great man, he said, his voice warm and low. I didn't waste time, spreading the documents on his desk. Pine Crest is building on my land, 96 homes, based on this contract. I pointed at Laura's paper. But here's the 1910 survey, showing the farm's 280 acres, not 200 like current records. I think they forged Grandpa's signature in 1997, when he was in the hospital. Daniel frowned, picking up the survey, his fingers tracing the hand-drawn boundaries. He flipped through the contract, pausing at the signature. This handwriting's unsteady, not like the Henry I remember. He muttered. He adjusted his glasses, comparing the documents under the desk lamp. If this checks out, it's a big deal. Pine Crest isn't just encroaching on new land, their current area might belong to you too. I nodded. Laura said, they've got connections at the county, but I don't care. I need to stop them. Daniel tapped his fingers on the desk, thinking, we need to check county records, see when the boundaries changed, and who approved it. If the signature's forged, that's fraud. I'll file for an emergency injunction to halt construction, but we need hard evidence. I told him what Martha Evans said about George Grayson, a former county worker close to Henry. I'll track him down, I said. Daniel nodded. Good, I'll call the county, request a history of boundary changes. Meet me back here this afternoon. I left Daniel's office and drove to the end of Oak Road, where Martha said George Grayson lived. His house was a small white bungalow, paint peeling, with a rocking chair on the porch. I knocked, and a man about 70, with salt and pepper hair, opened the door. I'm Sam Carter, Henry's grandson. I introduced myself. George squinted, then smiled. Look just like him. Come in. I explained Pine Crest, the survey, the forged contract. George sat down, rubbing his chin. In 1997, I was still at the county. Robert Bennett, county commissioner, Laura's husband, asked me to adjust the eastern boundary of Henry's farm. Said it was for a road easement, but I got suspicious since Henry was in the hospital. I refused to sign off, and a week later, I got transferred. I leaned forward. So who signed it? George shrugged. Not sure. I retired in 2000, but the records are still at the county. Find the 1997 file, compare it to Henry's real signature, you'll know. I thanked him, rushing back to my car, adrenaline pumping. That afternoon, I met Daniel again at his office. He slapped a stack of county papers on the desk. Found a major change in 1997, 80 acres carved off the farm, turned into public land, then sold to Pine Crest later. Signatures supposedly Henry's, but look here. He pointed to a copy of Henry's signature, from his will, firm, clear, nothing like the shaky scrawl on the contract. Fraud, I said. Voice steady. Daniel nodded. I filed for the injunction to stop construction. If George testifies, we can flip this case. I looked out the window, picturing Laura Bennett's face when she got the news. She thought she was untouchable, but Daniel and I had just found the crack in Grandpa's trap. Pine Crest was about to face the nightmare Henry had set up long ago. I left Daniel Hayes's office with a sense of victory brewing inside. The emergency injunction to halt construction had been filed, backed by the 1910 survey and evidence of the forged 1997 signature of my grandpa, Henry Carter. George Grayson agreed to testify, and Daniel was digging deeper into county records to expose Pine Crest's scheme. But I knew Laura Bennett wasn't one to back down. She'd warned me about her connections, and I was about to feel her counterattack firsthand. The next morning, I woke up in Grandpa's cabin, went to make coffee, and found no water coming out. I turned the faucet a few times, not a drop. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check your driveway. I ran to the porch, and my heart sank. 3 huge concrete blocks sat across the dirt path from the road to the farm, next to a white SUV with a Pine Crest security logo. A guy in uniform approached, handing me a thick envelope. Cease and desist notice from Pine Crest HOA, he said, voice flat. Retract all your claims, or face legal action. I tore open the envelope, skimming it. The letter accused me of using fake documents to slander Pine Crest, demanding reputation damages, a 6-figure sum. I looked at the guy, smirking. You guys serious? He shrugged. Just doing my job, have a good day. He walked back to the SUV, but it didn't leave, it parked there, like a living warning. I tried driving out, but the blocks trapped me in. I called the Willow Bend sheriff, but the deputy on the line just said, "It's a civil dispute, we don't get involved." Get a lawyer. My phone buzzed again, this time Laura calling. I picked up, her voice sickly sweet. "Good morning, Mr. Carter, like the new scenery." I gritted my teeth. "You're harassing me on my own land." She chuckled softly. "Actually, per county records, the real ones, that driveway's part of Pine Crest's common area. We've got the right to control it. You know your records are wrong. I gripped the phone tighter. You know they were changed illegally. Laura's tone cooled. Let me explain how things work here. Robert, my husband, plays golf with the county commissioner every Sunday. The building inspector's daughter works for my real estate firm. The water utility supervisor lives in Pine Crest. My stomach twisted as she went on. By tomorrow, your house will rack up at least 15 code violations. Water might get cut off for maintenance. Local contractors won't take your jobs. They know not to cross me, he yelled.
He yelled. That's illegal.
Laura laughed loudly. That's small-town politics, darling.
You can't win.
But I'm generous. Drop your claims, sign over the disputed land. I'll pay you a nice sum.
It'll all be over.
I growled. It's not about money, she cut me off.
Everything's about money.
Think about it, you've got till tomorrow night, she hung up. Sure enough, that afternoon, a county inspector showed up to check Grandpa's house. The guy walked around, scribbling non-stop, outdated wiring, non-compliant septic, hazardous porch railing. He handed me a list of violations, thousands in repairs, due immediately. As he left, another truck rolled up, planting signs along my fence, Pine Crest East Luxury Living coming soon. My water was already cut, now the pressure dropped to a trickle. I called the utility company. They said maintenance, and didn't know when it'd be done. That night, I sat on the porch in the dark, watching Pine Crest's security lights sweep across the field. My phone lit up with a text from Daniel. They countersued, saying your docs are fake, trial set 3 months out, they'll keep building. I sighed. 3 months, enough time for them to finish half the project, destroy everything Grandpa left. I needed to hit back faster. I pulled out my phone, recording a video, the concrete blocks, the violation list, Pine Crest signs on my land. This is how they play dirty, I said to the camera. But I've got proof, and I'm not giving up. I uploaded the video to YouTube, hands shaking as I hit post. Laura thought she could choke me out, but she didn't know I was Henry Carter's grandson, the man who'd set this trap long ago, and I'd make her step deeper into it. I stood on Grandpa Henry Carter's porch, staring at the concrete blocks blocking my driveway, and the Pine Crest security SUV parked on the road, like a dare. The video I'd posted on YouTube last night had a few hundred views, but Laura Bennett wasn't stopping. Water still cut off, the county's violation list hanging over me, and Pine Crest countersuing, claiming I'd forged documents. I knew I couldn't fight her whole system alone. If I wanted to win, I needed allies, people who hated Pine Crest as much as I did. I called Martha Evans, first thing in the morning. Martha, you know anyone in town who's been hassled by Pine Crest? I asked, voice urgent. She snorted over the phone. Oh Sam, sit down, it's a long list. She rattled off 15 names, families fined for painting their doors the wrong color, seniors threatened with liens because grandkids visited too long, a single mom forced to pay $900 for a toddler's fence. They're scared of Laura, Martha said, but if you give 'em hope, they'll stand up. I jotted them all down, adrenaline surging. This was my shot. I started with Emily Harper, a young mom Martha mentioned. Her house sat in the current Pine Crest neighborhood, a few miles from the farm, a small beige unit identical to dozens around it. I knocked and Emily answered, eyes red, clutching a $500 fine notice. Pine Crest fined me for planting tomatoes, she said, voice trembling. My husband works double shifts, we can't afford this. They said veggies aren't aesthetic. I sat at her kitchen table, spreading out the 1910 survey. This is my land, I said, including this area. Laura's building on my property, and I think they've screwed you over too. Emily studied the map, then looked up, eyes blazing. If you win, can we get rid of her? I nodded. I need people to help. Next was the Patel family, a few streets over. Mr. and Mrs. Patel invited me in, pointing to an empty swing set frame in their backyard. We spent $3,000 suing Pine Crest after they tore it down, Mrs. Patel said. Voice bitter. They claimed it broke rules, but other neighbors have them, no problem. It's not fair. I recorded their story on my phone, promising to use it against Laura. Mr. Patel shook my hand. If you need us, we'll back you. I spent the day driving around Willow Bend, knocking on every door from Martha's List. Tom Grayson, an older guy near the swamp, invited me for tea on his porch. I used to have 10 acres, he said, eyes clouding. Pine Crest fined me weekly, tall grass, unapproved shed. I couldn't keep fighting, so I sold cheap to them 5 years back. Now I know that land went to Laura. I pointed to the survey, part of that might be mine. Will you help me get it back? Tom nodded, clenching a fist. I want to see her fall. By evening I'd spoken to 27 families, all with similar stories, absurd fines, petty rules, pressure to sell below market value. They feared Laura, but when I showed them the survey, and told them about Daniel Hayes's injunction, fear turned to hope. I recorded another video, sitting in my car outside Grandpa's house, Pine Crest security lights, sweeping across the windshield. This is what Pine Crest does to Willow Bend folks, I said into the camera. Playing clips from Emily, the Patels' Tom. They think they're untouchable, but we outnumber them. Who's with me? I posted the video before bed, hands shaking with excitement. The next morning, my phone lit up with texts from unknown numbers. We're with you against Laura. The Millers, 42 Pine Crest Lane. She fined us $500 for planting flowers instead of grass. Another, Jackson here. They tore down my kid's slide without notice. We want in, I smiled. Grandpa's trap was spreading, not just through papers, but through the people Laura had crushed. I called Daniel. Can we form a community coalition against Pine Crest? I asked. He laughed over the phone. On your land? Absolutely. The current area's trickier, but if the boundaries hold, they've got no control. I nodded, though he couldn't see. I need the Pine Crest Community Center for a meeting tomorrow night. Daniel chuckled. They won't let you. I smirked. They don't own it. I do per the survey. I hung up, grabbed paper and pen, started drafting flyers. Emergency community meeting, your home's at risk. 7 p.m. tomorrow. Laura thought she could isolate me, but she didn't expect me to build an army right under her nose. Henry's trap wasn't just paperwork, it was the resentment of all Willow Bend, and I'd make Laura walk right into it. I sat in Grandpa Henry Carter's cabin, staring at the stack of freshly printed emergency community meeting flyers, heart racing with what was unfolding. The second video I'd posted on YouTube had gone viral in Willow Bend. Dozens of residents messaged me with support, ready to stand against Laura Bennett and Pine Crest HOA. I'd found allies in Emily Harper, the Patels, Tom Grayson, and dozens of others Laura had bullied. But I knew Grandpa's trap didn't stop at the 1910 survey or community unity. I needed something stronger to crush Pine Crest for good. That night, as I reviewed the survey again, headlights swept across my window. I stepped onto the porch, seeing an old sedan squeeze past the concrete blocks on my driveway and stop out front. A man got out, glancing around like he feared being followed. As he approached, I recognized Fred Larson, Pine Crest HOA's treasurer, someone I'd seen standing behind Laura during my site confrontation. I shouldn't be here, he whispered, clutching a USB drive. If Laura finds out, I'm done. Come inside, I said, leading him to the kitchen. Fred sat down, sweat beading on his forehead, despite the cool night. I've been Pine Crest's treasurer for 7 years, he began, voice shaky. I'm sick of how Laura runs things. When you showed up with that survey, I saw her panic, first time I've seen her scared. He slid the USB across the table. This is what you need to see. I plugged it into my laptop, opening a slew of files, financial sheets, meeting minutes, internal emails. Fred pointed at the screen. Laura uses the HOA funds like her personal bank. Special assessments vanish, contracts go to relatives, reserve funds get funneled into insider companies. I scrolled through a spreadsheet, 2023 road repair fees, each resident paid $2,000, totaling $400,000, but actual costs were only $200,000. Where'd the rest go? I asked. Fred shrugged. Nobody knows. Laura controls all accounts. I asked once, she threatened to fire me. I opened another file, a contract with Sunshine Consulting LLC, a firm Pine Crest hired at an outrageous rate. Who owns it? I asked. Fred lowered his head. Laura's son-in-law. Landscaping, security, legal consulting, it all flows to her family. I leaned forward, heart pounding. Anything else? Fred pointed to an email from Laura to Robert Bennett, her husband, the county commissioner, dated the day before Pine Crest East got approved. Push the permits through, she wrote. Use the East land as collateral for a $16 million loan. I stood up fast. The East land's mine. They used my land to borrow money. Fred nodded. They planned to build, sell the homes, repay it before anyone noticed. But your survey messed that up. I opened another file, an internal financial report. Over 3 years, $427,000 in HOA fees got funneled to Sunshine Consulting, with no clear invoices. This is theft, I said, voice firm. Fred nodded. More than that. 20 homes in the current area, the ones you say are on your land, residents have complained about flooding for years. Laura promised fixes, did nothing. Now I get why. She knows they might not be legal. I looked at Fred, feeling like I'd struck gold. Why give me this? He sighed. I'm not the only one fed up. Plenty of residents are sick of Laura's rules, but I've got young kids, I don't want them growing up in this community anymore. I clapped his shoulder. Will you testify? Fred hesitated, then nodded. If you can protect us. I copied the USB, handed the original back to Fred. Act like nothing's up. I'll use this tomorrow night. Fred left, disappearing into the night. I turned back to my laptop, starting the camera. People of Willow Bend, I said, holding up the USB. Here's proof Pine Crest isn't just building on my land, they're embezzling your money. $427,000 in HOA fees vanished into Laura Bennett's family. They borrowed $16 million, using my land they don't own. Tomorrow, 7 p.m., Community Center, we'll take them down. I posted the video, heart thumping. Views spiked within minutes. The next morning, I got a text from Daniel Hayes. Injunction approved, court paused Pine Crest East pending a ruling. Your video's heating this up. I smiled, but knew Laura wouldn't sit still. I hit the print shop, spreading flyers across town, from the grocery store to the coffee shop. People whispered as I passed, some shook my hand, thanking me. We'll be there, an elderly woman said. Laura's gone too far. I returned to Grandpa's house, looking at the now silent field thanks to the injunction. Laura thought she could choke me out with fines and connections, but she didn't expect Fred, the community, or now the illegal financial proof. Henry's trap wasn't just the land, it was the truth he left behind, and I was turning it into Pine Crest's nightmare. I stood in front of the Pine Crest Community Center, clutching a stack of flyers, and the USB, with illegal financial evidence Fred Larson had given me. Tonight, 7 p.m., was the moment I'd been building toward since discovering Grandpa Henry Carter's 1910 survey. My third YouTube video had surpassed 5,000 views in 24 hours, with dozens of comments from Willow Bend residents demanding justice. Daniel Hayes' injunction had paused the Pine Crest East project, but I knew Laura Bennett wouldn't let it slide. This was my chance to turn Grandpa's trap into a knockout blow. I stepped into the center, a modern building with polished wood floors and walls hung with pastoral paintings, ironically, sitting on my land per the survey. I brought a projector, laptop and mic, ready to present. Groups of residents trickled in, Emily Harper with her husband, the Patels, Tom Grayson, and dozens more from Martha Evans' list. By 7 p.m., over 100 people packed the room, chairs full, many standing along the walls, whispering anxiously. I set up my phone to live stream, placing it on a tripod to capture everything. I stepped to the podium, taking a deep breath. I'm Sam Carter, I began. Voice echoing through the mic, My grandpa Henry Carter owned the Willow Bend farm for 60 years. Pine Crest is building 96 homes on my land, but I'm not just here for me, I'm here for all of you. The crowd went silent, eyes fixed on me. I projected the 1910 survey onto the screen. This is the original boundary, 280 acres, covering Pine Crest East and 20 of your current homes. They're building on my land, based on a forged 1997 contract, when my grandpa was in the hospital. Murmurs rippled through the room. I continued, displaying Laura's contract. This signature isn't his. We have proof of fraud, but it doesn't stop there. I plugged Fred's USB into the laptop, pulling up the financial records. Pine Crest embezzled $427,000 of your HOA fees over 3 years, funneled to Laura Bennett's family companies, like Sunshine Consulting LLC. They borrowed $16 million, using my land to build Pine Crest East. They stole from me, and from you. The room erupted. People stood shouting. I paid $2,000 for road repairs, and the roads are still trashed, a man roared. They fined me $500 for flowers, Emily Harper yelled. I raised a hand for quiet, but the doors burst open. Laura Bennett stormed in, pushing through the crowd, face flushed. This meeting's unauthorized, she screamed, pointing at me. Everyone out now. Emily stepped forward, facing her down. What are you gonna do? Fine us again? Haven't you taken enough? The crowd roared with applause. I kept my voice steady. I don't want trouble. I want to fix this. Pine Crest has cheated us for years. I played recordings from Emily, the Patels, and Tom, detailing fines and oppression. Residents started sharing. A mom cried, as she said her kid couldn't play outside past 7 p.m. due to noise rules. An older man recounted being forced to sell land like Tom. I let them speak, passing the mic, tears and anger filling the room. After an hour, I took the mic back. Here's my proposal. We form the Willow Bend Community Alliance. Together, we negotiate fair new boundaries, build a community with reasonable rules, transparent finances. Laura, sitting in the back row, slammed the table, and stood. You can't do that. These homes are bound by Pine Crest contracts. I held up the survey. Contracts based on forged land aren't valid, Miss Bennett. I don't want anyone's house, I want to right the wrong. The crowd buzzed with debate. I called for a vote. 89 families raised their hands to join the alliance on the spot. Laura screamed, "You'll regret this," and stormed out, phone to her ear. The residents clapped, hugged, but I knew the fight wasn't over. As they dispersed, Fred Larson pulled me aside, whispering, "Laura controls the accounts." I tried looking, but she locked everything. "Something's bigger than the $427,000, I nodded. "Thanks, Fred. Stay safe, I'll handle it." I was packing up when Laura returned, just the two of us in the empty room. She stepped close, voice hissing through gritted teeth. "You made a big mistake. By tomorrow, you'll wish you never came to Willow Bend. I've got the county commissioner, the sheriff, the judge in my pocket. This rebellion's dead on arrival." I looked her in the eye. "Try it. I've got the community, the evidence and the truth," she sneered. "Truth doesn't win in this town." She slammed the door on her way out. Through the window, I saw residents gathered in the parking lot, talking excitedly. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Environmental survey results came in. "Something big on that land, meet tomorrow." I smiled, shutting down the projector. Laura thought she had everything locked down, but she didn't know I had Grandpa's trap, and now all of Willow Bend. I recorded the live stream's outro. "Tonight we change the game." Laura threatened me, but I've got you, and the truth. Stay tuned, the big hit's coming. I posted the video, watching the views soar. Laura might have connections, but I had financial proof, the community, and whatever Daniel just hinted at. She didn't realize she'd just stepped deeper into the trap Henry set decades ago. I woke up in Grandpa Henry Carter's cabin, my head still spinning from last night's fiery community meeting. The live stream I'd posted on YouTube had passed 10,000 views, with hundreds of comments from Willow Bend residents supporting the Willow Bend Community Alliance. 89 families had sided with me against Laura Bennett and Pine Crest HOA. But her final threat, "By tomorrow, you'll wish you never came," echoed in my mind. I knew she wouldn't give up easily, and I had to be ready for her next counterattack. Early that morning, I drove to Daniel Hayes' office, bringing Fred Larson's USB and the 1910 survey. Daniel was waiting, eyes gleaming as he slapped a file on the desk. "Environmental surveys back," he said, pointing to the report. "The eastern swamp on your farm has 3 endangered species, green herons, bog turtles, and a rare plant. Building there violates federal law, not just state." I smirked. "So Pine Crest isn't just stealing land, they're wrecking the environment." Daniel nodded. "I'm adding this to the lawsuit. The injunction will hold, but Laura's fighting back." He handed me a stack of court papers. "Pine Crest hired a pricey Atlanta lawyer, requesting the injunction be lifted, claiming your documents are fake. They pushed the trial up next week." I clenched my fists. "They want to finish building before we can prove anything." Daniel nodded. "Exactly. I need you to find more evidence, especially from George Grayson. His testimony on the 1997 boundary change is key." I left the office, and as I got in my car, my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Check the Willow Bend Chronicle." I pulled up the newspaper's site, and my heart sank. A headline screamed, "Carter heir accused of forging documents to steal Pine Crest land." The article quoted Laura, calling me an Atlanta conman, out to ruin the community. I gritted my teeth. She was spreading lies to discredit me before the trial. I recorded a video right there in the car. "Laura Bennett just slandered me in the paper. Here's the 1910 survey, 100% real. I'm fighting for Willow Bend, not to steal from anyone. Trust me, we'll win." I posted it on YouTube, knowing I had to hit back fast. I drove to George Grayson's house, filling him in on the article and trial. George sat in his rocking chair, rubbing his chin. "Laura's played dirty for years. In 1997, Robert Bennett pressured the county to change the boundary, while Henry was in the hospital. I didn't sign off, but someone else did. Guy named Carl Jenkins, retired now. If you find Carl, he might know who was behind it." I wrote down the name, thanked George, and raced home to dig through Grandpa's records. In an old notebook, I found Henry's note, "Carl Jenkins, county untrustworthy, 1997. Grandpa had suspected him all along. I tracked Carl's address, through an old phone book, finding him on the outskirts of Willow Bend. I knocked on his door, a small house with a torn screen. Carl, a wiry man in his 60s, answered, eyes wary. "I'm Sam Carter, Henry's grandson," I said. "I know you worked at the county in 1997. Who changed my grandpa's land boundary?" Carl stepped back, but I held up the survey. "I've got proof, help me, or I'll drag you to court." He sighed, letting me in. "Robert Bennett forced me to sign," Carl confessed. "They paid me $5,000 to fake Henry's signature. I didn't want to, but I needed the money then." I recorded his statement on my phone, heart pounding. "Will you testify?" Carl hesitated, then nodded. "If you protect me from the Bennetts," I agreed, rushing to Daniel. He listened to the recording, eyes lighting up. "This is the kill shot. I'll add Carl to the witness list. Signature fraud's a criminal offense." I nodded, but knew Laura wouldn't sit idly by. That afternoon, I got word from Emily Harper. "Pine Crest sent letters to every home, saying you want to kick us out to take the land." I gritted my teeth. Laura was turning the community against me before the trial. I recorded another video, standing outside the community center. "Laura's lying to turn you against me. I'm not taking anyone's house, I'm fighting to protect you from her. Here's Carl Jenkins, confirming my grandpa's signature was forged." I played the clip, posted the video, and watched the views spike. That night, I got a text from Fred Larson. "Laura knows I talked to you. She locked the HOA accounts, might be destroying evidence." I called Daniel immediately. "We need to get the court to freeze Pine Crest's accounts," I said. He agreed, filing an emergency motion the next morning. Laura thought she could choke me out with lawyers and rumors, but I had Carl, Fred, and the community. Henry's trap was tightening around her, and I wouldn't stop until she fell. I stood in Grandpa Henry Carter's cabin, holding my phone after getting word from Daniel Hayes. the motion to freeze Pine Crest HOA's accounts had been filed with the court that morning. My latest YouTube video, with Carl Jenkins' testimony confirming the 1997 forged signature, had passed 15,000 views, spreading through Willow Bend like wildfire. Carl and George Grayson were ready to testify. Fred Larson warned Laura was erasing evidence, and the environmental survey showed Pine Crest violating federal law. Laura Bennett was cornered, but I knew she'd fight to the end. That morning, I drove to the Willow Bend courthouse, bringing the 1910 survey, Fred's USB, and the environmental report. The preliminary hearing came before the main trial, deciding if the injunction would hold. Daniel met me in the hallway, eyes gleaming. "We've got Carl and George as witnesses, plus Fred's financial docs. Laura's got no way out." I nodded, but my heart still raced as I stepped into the courtroom. Laura sat at the defendant's table, flanked by an expensive Atlanta lawyer, her face cold, but her eyes betraying a flicker of worry. The judge, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair, banged his gavel to start. Daniel went first. "Pine Crest is illegally building on 280 acres of Mr. Carter's land, based on a forged 1997 signature from Henry Carter, while he was hospitalized. We have testimony from Carl Jenkins, a former county worker, confirming Robert Bennett coerced him into the fraud. Further, they embezzled $427,000 in HOA fees and violated federal environmental law." He projected the survey, fake contract, and environmental report onto the screen. Laura's lawyer countered. "These are old documents, unverified. Pine Crest has a legal contract and county approval." But when Daniel called Carl to the stand, the room shifted. Carl, voice shaky but clear, recounted Robert Bennett paid me $5,000 to sign the contract as Henry Carter. "I regret it, but it's true." George Grayson followed. "I refused to alter the boundary in 1997, because Henry didn't agree. Someone did it behind my back." Laura squirmed in her seat, whispering urgently to her lawyer. Daniel landed the final blow. "We request Pine Crest's accounts be frozen. They're destroying evidence of embezzlement." The judge frowned, looking at Laura. "Miss Bennett, any response?" Her lawyer stood stammering. "We need time to review." But the judge banged his gavel. Injunction upheld. Pine Crest accounts frozen pending investigation. Main trial set for 2 weeks. The room buzzed. I exhaled, but Laura turned to me, eyes sharp as knives. "This isn't over," she hissed before storming out. That afternoon, I got a call from Janet Brooks, a reporter I'd contacted after the community meeting. "I dug into Pine Crest," she said over the phone. "Story drops tomorrow, in the Willow Bend Chronicle. Pine Crest HOA embezzles resident funds, builds illegally on disputed land. Got a county source, confirming their approvals were rushed improperly." I laughed aloud. "Thanks, Janet, this'll bury her." My next YouTube video went up right after today. The court upheld the injunction and froze Pine Crest's accounts. This is our win. Willow Bend's getting justice. Janet's article the next morning caused a storm. Residents gathered outside the community center, demanding Laura resign. By noon, news hit the state. The Georgia Environmental Office launched an investigation into Pine Crest East for swamp violations. Fred Larson called, panicked. "Laura knows I gave you the USB. She fired me, but I backed everything up." I reassured him, "Fred, you're safe. She's done." 2 days later, the pressure on Laura peaked. Daniel called. Pine Crest's lawyer offered a deal. Laura pleads guilty to embezzlement for a lighter sentence, gives up HOA control. She's out of options. I nodded, feeling relief mixed with pride. Laura thought she could crush me with connections, county commissioner, sheriff, judge, but Grandpa's trap, paired with the truth from Carl, Fred, and the community, flipped the script. I recorded a final video that day, standing in front of Pine Crest East's now silent field. Laura Bennett pled guilty. "Pine Crest isn't a threat anymore. This is my grandpa's win, mine and yours. Thank you, Willow Bend, we did it." I posted the video, watching views climb. Laura fell not just because of the land, but her own greed and arrogance. Henry's trap had closed, and I'd pulled the string. I sat in Grandpa Henry Carter's cabin, looking out the window at the quiet eastern field. No more excavators, no more Pine Crest East signs. Laura Bennett had pled guilty to financial embezzlement, relinquishing HOA control after pressure from the court, press, and Willow Bend community. My final YouTube video hit over 20,000 views, with hundreds of thankful comments from residents. But this victory wasn't just about reclaiming land, it was about fixing what Laura broke and fulfilling Grandpa's legacy. I knew I needed a solution for everyone. The next morning, I called Daniel Hayes. Laura's done, but what about the residents? 20 homes in the current area sit on my land per the 1910 survey. I don't want to kick anyone out. Daniel chuckled over the phone. You can grant them legal deeds, transfer usage rights for a nominal fee, keep the swamp as a preserve. What about Pine Crest East? I thought for a moment. I want to redesign it. Fewer homes, eco-friendly, under Willow Bend Community Alliance. Daniel agreed. I'll draft the papers, hold a public meeting, let the community decide. I chose Willow Bend High School for the meeting, sending invites through the Alliance group chat I'd set up after the fiery community center night. That evening, over 300 people showed up, not just the original 89 families, but others who'd feared Laura and now wanted in. I stood on the stage, mic in hand, feeling both nervous and proud. Thank you for trusting me, I began. Pine Crest fell because of you, Emily Harper, the Patels, Tom Grayson, Fred Larson, and everyone who spoke up. Now we rebuild. I projected the 1910 survey on the screen. This is my land, 280 acres. I'm not taking anyone's home in the current area. I propose granting legal deeds to the 20 families on disputed land, $1 per house, so you're secure forever. The crowd erupted in applause, some shouting, "Thank you, Sam." I continued, "The eastern swamp will be a preserve, no building, keeping it for the green herons, bog turtles, and nature my grandpa loved." Then I moved to Pine Crest East. Laura's 96-home project was too big, environmentally harmful. I want a redesign, 30 small, energy-efficient, affordable homes, managed by Willow Bend Community Alliance. No ridiculous fees, no dumb rules, just a real community. Applause broke out again, mixed with cheers. Emily Harper stood. "Who'll handle the finances?" "I don't want another Laura," I smiled. "We'll vote transparent, with annual audits." Fred Larson agreed to oversee initially. Tom Grayson raised his hand. "What about our flooding homes?" Laura promised fixes, never did. I nodded. "I'll use the frozen HOA funds once the court releases them, to fix drainage. No one gets left behind." The crowd cheered, and I called for a vote. 298 hands went up for the plan, only 2 didn't, maybe still skeptical. I recorded a live stream on the spot. Willow Bend just decided its future: legal homes, a preserve, and a new community. This is our win. The next week, I met Daniel to sign the deeds for the 20 families. Each got their title for $1, hugging me with thanks. Fred and I started auditing Pine Crest's accounts after the court unfroze them. $1.2 million remained, enough to fix drainage and start the 30 new homes. I contacted an Atlanta architect specializing in sustainable housing to design the new Pine Crest East: recycled wood, solar power, no swamp impact. A month later, I stood at the swamp's edge, watching a new sign go up: Henry Carter Preserve, protected by Willow Bend Community Alliance. Residents came for the opening, bringing kids who ran along the wooden walkway I'd funded from savings. Emily Harper approached, handing me a basket of homegrown tomatoes. "No one finds me anymore," she laughed. I nodded, warmth spreading through me. This was what Grandpa wanted: land protected, people living peacefully. I recorded one last video that day. "Willow Bend's ours now. Laura lost, but we won, not just the land, but the community. Thanks for helping me make my grandpa's trap real." I posted it, watching views rise, but this time not for drama, for hope. The battle was over, and I knew I'd kept my promise to Henry. A year has passed since Laura Bennett's downfall, and I'm sitting on the porch of Grandpa Henry Carter's cabin in Willow Bend, the red sunset stretching across the eastern field. The house is now the hub of the Willow Bend Community Alliance, where residents gather to discuss planting trees, fixing roads, or just sharing coffee. The eastern swamp, now the Henry Carter Preserve, echoes with frog calls and bird song every evening. The 30 small homes of the new Pine Crest East have risen, simple, sustainable, free of the fake luxury Laura once chased. The 20 families in the current area keep their homes with legal deeds I granted, and the drainage systems fixed, ending the days of flooding. I hold a mug of coffee, watching kids, Emily Harper's, the Patels and others once scared of losing everything under Pine Crest, run along the wooden walkway around the swamp. My last YouTube video, posted a month ago capturing the preserve's opening, hit 25,000 views. But today, I'm not filming for views. I want to record this for myself, for Grandpa. I step into his small office, where it all began. The messy papers are now neatly shelved, but I pull open the old desk drawer, retrieving a notebook I haven't touched since finding the 1910 survey. I flip through yellowed pages, reading his notes on crops, weather and hurried lines. Pine Crest came again, no sale, never. Then I stop at the last page, a short letter addressed to Sam, I'd never seen before. Sam, he wrote, his script firm despite a weakening hand, if you're reading this, you've kept this land. I didn't just leave you land, I left you my belief that you'd do right. Don't let them ruin the swamp, don't let them steal what we built. I'm proud of you. I slump into the chair, tears rolling down. He knew I'd fight, even when I was still in Atlanta, years distant from him. His trap wasn't just the survey or papers, it was the faith he placed in me in the community. I stand, looking out at the field now truly Willow Bend's. I've decided to stay here, not return to Atlanta. My environmental law work now guards places like this, starting with home. I grab my phone, filming a final video. This is Willow Bend today. No more Laura, no more Pine Crest, just us. My grandpa Henry Carter left me this land, and I kept it for him, for you. Thanks for helping me fulfill his legacy. I post it watching the last daylight fade. As night falls I stand on the porch, hearing the swamp come alive. Henry's not here, but I feel him in every blade of grass, every drop of water. He won, and so did I. Willow Bend is living proof of his legacy, and I'll keep it forever. The story HOA built 96 homes on my land, finds they walked right into my trap, that I've recounted reflects many real aspects of life in the US today, especially issues of land ownership, HOA abuses of power, and the strength of community against injustice. In the story, Sam Carter inherits 280 acres in Willow Bend, Georgia, from his grandpa Henry Carter, only to find Pine Crest HOA, led by Laura Bennett, illegally building on his land and embezzling $427,000 from residents. Through a legal battle and community unity, Sam not only reclaims the land, but builds a fair Willow Bend community alliance, turning the swamp into a preserve and granting legal deeds to residents. The lessons here are practical for modern America, where HOAs often face criticism for harsh rules and opaque finances. Laura using Sam's land as collateral for a $16 million loan mirrors real U.S. lawsuits over HOA financial fraud. Sam's use of YouTube to rally the community shows the power of social media in mobilizing support, a trend seen in the U.S. from Black Lives Matter to local campaigns. Henry's letter and Sam's resolve remind us that family legacy and personal grit can overcome corrupt systems. The advice here is this: if you face injustice, like an HOA or developer screwing you over, don't shy away from finding evidence like Sam's survey, teaming up with allies like Emily, the Patels, Tom, and using tech to spread the truth. Be patient digging into details, like Sam with county records and Fred's finances, because concrete facts win, not emotions or empty promises. Finally, like Sam turning the land into a preserve, turn hardship into a chance to better your community, leaving a legacy as proud as Henry's. In today's America, where individual and collective rights often clash, unity and resolve can change a whole town or your own life. Thanks for joining me and Willow Bend in protecting Grandpa Henry's legacy. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories of fighting for justice. See you in the upcoming video, where we'll keep exploring the power of truth and community.